let's play this up, but basically Rogan, Zuckerberg, we saw apparently Jensen Huang on an interview, a similar vein, but basically AI that can write at the quality of an engineer. We're already seeing this in benchmarks through GPT, definitely through Anthropic's Sonnet model, like at the quality of code that this is writing. But I think this is a pretty clear public moment where Zuckerberg, the head of a company who, again, is, I don't know exactly what he's doing, rehabilitating his image, all this great stuff that he's doing right now, but is trying to be, I think, slightly transparent in his trajectory. And I think he wouldn't be saying this if he didn't have at least some belief it is true. So basically talking about AI that can be as effective as a mid-level engineer and can write code. And let's listen to this clip here for a second.
Probably in 2025, we at Meta, as well as the other companies that are basically working on this, are going to have an AI that can effectively be a mid-level engineer that you have at your company that can write code. And once you have that, then in the beginning it'll be really expensive to run, and then you can get it to be more efficient. And then over time we'll get to the point where a lot of the code in our apps and including the AI that we generate is going to be built by AI engineers instead of people engineers. Probably in 2025.
So that's a clip. And it started, I think, quite a bit of conversation online here. You can see lots of commentary, or at least resharing of this clip. And there are people taking both sides about, again, I think the speed, how quickly this is happening, which I have definitely at least seen somewhat in my experience. And then even basically my own experience of being almost like a crappy front-end dev that couldn't quite grasp JavaScript even, to being able to work with Anthropic or ChatGPT, combining that with a Google Collab notebook or even a Google Sheet app script, and really accomplishing some incredible things. And I think there's now versions of this that are going much farther than that. And I think one of the gaps here has been like, can you get something into production? Or the backside of this was like, hey, can you get something live and operating on a real infrastructure, say like AWS, from like a code prototype that you have generated? And I think that was a really difficult thing to do. But something like Replit, which was a company before this, I don't know enough about them to give you the whole breakdown on it. But what I can tell you is that they've really embraced this AI, almost agentic flow that is coming here right now. And with the infrastructure that they had, allow you to basically put apps into production from a prompt, like very quickly. And you can even see, again, a couple sort of testimonials here. So like this, I would say, is probably the prime example of where we're seeing this get put into place, at least from like maybe a more consumer or solopreneur or just like larger audience seeing like what can AI do. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on the back end here. We've heard from Google, who talked about how much code that they've been producing through AI. Amazon, who did, I believe, a migration from a legacy system where they needed to update that system and cut down that time massively using AI. And I think that there's a lot of fear right now that is most likely, in my mind, justified. I already think there is like, and part of it is people like, I think, just don't want to do the work anymore. So for example, why would you write one article that takes you 12 hours when you can use AI to do it fast? And of course we know there's quality trade-offs and all of this stuff, but basically with the right architecture and even say programmatic content creation, you are getting to a decent level of quality that would take like dozens or hundreds of people to write, and you can do that in minutes, seconds. And so even as a content creator or writer, specifically B2B writing to try to generate leads and content that attracts people, you're competing against that. And so it creates this huge challenge by default that I think a lot of people are nervously conflicting with. And that's just like one side, that's content production. And generally this model or this idea of content production has been generate high value content around high-level queries or information that a prospective customer might search for. This is pioneered by HubSpot inbound marketing. And then overall become that touch point, that brand that they trust. And so when that purchase decision is ready, you're already a familiar face providing high quality content, and then you can convert and become a customer to that business. And that's been a huge part of an industry and an economy, starting in North America, but then a lot of needs for translation was required, and then a lot of pointing towards, I would say, this remote nomad culture where people could do this type of work in a digitally remote way. And so then other countries got brought into this. And so it's a worldwide economy that I think is really, in a way, under attack from AI that can do almost already as good of job. And even, for example, what I'm seeing is a lot of companies, this idea of quick experimentation, A/B testing. If you can generate, say, 1,000 ads and test those to see which ones are working best using AI, that's much better, much more efficient, much more cheap than trying to do one at a time as a person. You can never hit the efficiency and the speed. And that's what even historically a lot of these companies have been able to do, which is like do experiments much more quickly, get more data out there, get more data in, and then move quickly to optimize over time. And so to me, it's not just that the AI is there, it's that there's a lot of incentives, and it's also that there's you're basically competing against it. And so just like there's this chips race with NVIDIA and all these companies, there's also this race that's taking place in the economies of AI, where AI is touching upon, if you're an engineer and you're competing against and you're writing all the code yourself versus a cursor-enabled engineer, a cursor, which is like a co-pilot for engineers that works with Anthropic Sonnet, that has really gained a ton of adoption, is now writing a lot of code. And from the engineers I've talked to, is doing an incredible job. You're competing against a 10 times, maybe even 100 times engineer. And so you're forced to participate. And I think there is a value proposition in some ways where people will say, well, the real human touch, maybe we see this in qualitative research already, where like me manually reviewing and really interpreting and extracting and spending that time is some of the value proposition, that human-led touch. There's a subset of sectors and parts of the economy where that is a meaningful value proposition. And in a lot of cases, I'm not sure how big that economy is or how big that segment is. And I think what's going to have to happen is a lot of people are going to need to adapt and adjust to very quick moving AI that is deploying, self-building, self-designing, self-optimizing, self-creating, to try to find these pockets where your abilities are still valuable and still worth being paid. And I would say, even for example, like the company Speak that we work on, like the amount of money that people would pay for, say, a custom, I'll just use one example, like a custom sentiment model not that long ago is huge. Whereas now that's not really required, because you can use an LLM and you can fine tune that LLM and you can customize the context for the engine and the output and how you want it. And you can run that again very quickly. We've seen that commoditization of this type of technology very, very quickly. And so where, say, 5 years ago, people were willing to pay $50,000 to $100,000, maybe even more for that. Now people are looking at, hey, how can I accomplish this for literally $20 a month? And we've had to make changes to our business model. We've had to make changes to our pricing, to our value proposition, all because of this, because the technology is moving so quickly. And if code can be, for example, generated by AI, it's also very easy to, again, produce a working version. Now, in most cases, or a lot of cases, I don't think that quick generation is matching what refined platform with real work and effort and expertise put on. I think that's a hard thing. And I think a lot of companies are still in this build or buy mindset where building is not still the best option. And again, that percentage that building is not the right option might continue to decrease. But I do think, again, it's, if you're doing a more complex application, and for us, it's like audio data, transcribe, and then pull out all these things. You've got so many multi-layer touch points and all of this, that even the dependencies that are required or the maintenance or all of these things can really add up to that not being something that's maybe a core competency in the business, and maybe creates a challenge for you to maintain. And so we've already seen that even in Speak, with a small percentage of demand that we capture, that a lot of teams have tried it and it hasn't worked. Or just an example, we have this little embeddable recorder function where I can create this little link and I have this embeddable recorder that I can create and I can share that out. And even that, like what we're working with a company here right now, just on, if I'm just to continue and close off this example, just so it makes sense to you. Yeah, let's see if I can pull this up. Just with this example alone, the amount of infrastructure required to, again, this looks simple here, but you would need to maintain iOS compatibility. What browsers does it work for? Android, iOS, you've got laptops, you've got desktops. And so very quickly, even just something like capturing a recording can be a pretty complex mechanism that you need to manage and has a lot of problems. And so maybe a simple AI production that might feel clean and clear might become a lot more complex. And so again, this build or buy mentality can be difficult. Now, if I was just to go back again on the bigger picture, is where AI is coming for a percentage of jobs. That's very scary. And I think there's a lot of people questioning about even, okay, by the end of 2025, by 26, 27, all this agentic behavior, all this self-writing, self-creating code. There's apparently people murmuring at OpenAI about completing the next level towards AGI. Then things could change very quickly. To me, there's a risk of, I guess, I would say radical deflationary. I don't know if radical deflationary is the right way to put it, but radical like deflation of maybe incomes from high quality or from high income people. And I think that's a really terrifying thing. And there's been a lot of years where you say you're a dev in Silicon Valley, you're a machine learning engineer, you're making 400, 500, 700K. And yeah, it's expensive to live there, but you're still making a lot of money. And now there's been a ratcheting up of base cost expenses and even childcare and all these things there. If all of a sudden the market changes really quickly and you can only get a job for 100,000 or 200,000 and you've been making 700,000 and people will say, whoa, woe is me, as life is so hard. But that's still, there's a percentage of the population who are now accustomed to that lifestyle. Maybe they've got a mortgage because of that. They've got all these things. And the rapid shift can be super destabilizing on a very, I think, state by state or province by province or country or even global level. And I think that's something that we're both some of us are like anticipating, but then also not anticipating very well at the same time. So I'm doing a lot of thinking about this. I think it's also in a way putting me into a state of paralysis, and I'm questioning sometimes like if what I'm doing even worth it? I think that's a scary place to be. And also at the same time trying to figure out, hey, if this is true, okay, timeline is one part, but how do I pivot my expertise or pivot my network or pivot people's perception of me to be still value creating so that I don't have personally the experience of like rapid income deflation? Because most people, I think that they say, okay, I'm going to make 150 this year, and then I'm going to move up to 160 and then 170 and keep going up. But if that's not true, and we know that inflation is going to continue, possibly even acceleration of inflation in some places, then there's a huge out of touch loop that is taking place there. And so I'm thinking about that a lot. I'm sure there are other people. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on this. It's just like something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And I think we have some insight into what's coming, but we also don't have full clarity. And again, a lot of conflicting reports, systems like this Devon platform that are doing code for engineers, again, apparently has lots of problems in it. We know that there's the idea of hallucinations or generating code that seems like it's good, and then you put it into production or put it into the app script or whatever it is, and it doesn't work, and you have to go back and forth 50 times to get it right. And so are we there yet? Are we not there yet? How quick does this loop close? And I think there's a really interesting discussion on the podcast with Brad Gerstner and Bill Gurley talking about like closed loop systems where, say, you have a GitHub commit or something like that, and you can see if it works without error. These type of closed loop systems can rapidly improve, maybe similar to what we've seen with Tesla's full self-driving and the rapid improvement of that. And we can see that even in charts there, how quickly self-driving miles on the Tesla are there. And now you can see a couple charts of this moving, and I've seen even a more recent chart. But again, basically the level of disengagement is continuing up. And so that's that closed loop system, which is really, really, I think, fascinating. So AI coming for us. How quickly, what way, how can you find value proposition? I think there's this idea of, oh, you should have been tradesmen and working physically. I think in some cases that might have a longer lifetime, but at the same time, now there's all the talk about 2025. Okay, yeah, it's the year of agents, but it's also the year of robotics. And so more and more robotics are coming into play. I think this is something that I'm keeping my eye on. Got all these different robots that are very cheap and now capable of doing some pretty interesting things. And so, again, this is in China and all this stuff, but the proof of concept is there, and this stuff is going to move pretty damn quickly, probably more quickly than we think. And that's been my experience over the last few years. This is all moving pretty damn quickly, and more than even some of the technologists and techno-optimists might even think. So, okay. Whew, that's a lot we went through on the AI piece.